Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is still doing well, and welcome to this early morning or middle of the night bonus upload. It depends on either where you live or however you choose to read your clock. Before we get into it, a couple links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click that like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. And yes, folks, they definitely matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to this early morning or middle of the night bonus upload, shall we? Tonight's first encounter. On a summer evening at the end of July in 2008, we were camping while working to sell our wares at a flea market in Huntington, West Virginia. It was hot in the camper, so I got up and walked outside, where I found my nephew sitting and texting on his cell phone. It was maybe 3 in the morning. Deciding to take a walk in the night air, we made our way about 100 yards to the end of the long flea market building and sat down on a concrete slab. The light that was on top of the building illuminated the area where we sat. To our front there was a wide open field, and behind the field there was a tree line that led to a forest. A large billboard on the highway cast a sliver of light across the ground, but the rest of the field was pitch black. As we are chatting, I saw something white about 75 to 80 yards away, squatting down on the edge of the tree line. I looked at my nephew and asked if he saw what I was seeing. He said he did, but neither of us could determine what it was. This creature started to emerge from the tree line. It came out about 20 feet, almost crawling to stay close to the ground. When it reached the edge of the sliver of light that was streaming across the field, it paused for a second, never breaking its gaze on us. When it reached that edge of that light, it leapt, elongating its body to move through the light in one movement, and landed in the darkness on the other side, still maintaining its stare. The time in the light allowed me to see it more clearly. Its body was long, gangly, slender, and a pale white. At this time, it was about 10 yards away from us, having cleared half of the original distance. It started to inch closer, pausing in a stealthful, curious manner, inching towards us as we sat there shocked and frozen at the sight of this creature. Now it's 3 yards away, and it stayed in that position for a long time. At that point, I had time to take in its features in greater detail. Its stature was 4 to 5 feet tall, very lean and skinny, pale white skin with no hair on the creature at all. It kept itself in a hunched position when still, its knees folded backward like an animal's hind flank. Its arms were long and skinny, reaching down to its hands, and had very long, thin fingers with what looked to be claws at the end. It had large, black, almond-shaped eyes, very small, pointed ears that were close to its head. It had very long, pointed, interlocking teeth that were always exposed, and its lips were so small they barely showed around its huge teeth. Its nose turned upward like a bat and laid close against its face. Crouched, it slowly walked to the edge light we were enveloped in, within 2 yards of us now. It was staring at us, making a low snarling sound as it breathed. That was all I could hear over the pounding of my heart, which was now in my throat. It was staring at us and cocking its head from side to side as if it was trying to figure out its next move. As I sat there wondering what could possibly happen next, it sprang into the light, with its arms open and mouth wide open, making crazy, screaming, growling sounds and running toward us. Coming to within a foot of us, I leapt to my feet, putting my fists up in a defensive posture. It looked up as if noticing I was larger than it originally thought. Then it quickly turned and ran away, kicking dirt and gravel in my face. It was off through the field, and I watched as it ran toward that forest. Then I heard the rustling of the brush as this creature moved through the woods, and that was the last time I ever saw this creature. The first video we are going to look at is, well, some sort of cryptid or some sort of demon. It almost resembles what we call a crawler, but it does something very strange at the end. It kind of just looks like it jumps into this guy and then just disappears to the side of the building. I'm not sure. The video is definitely interesting and definitely creepy. It's not something I'd like to run into while sitting on my back deck or something. Here it is. You guys decide. Like I said, definitely a creepy video. Not really sure what it is. I guess I would call it a crawler. And once again, definitely not something I'd like to have strolling up onto my back patio or deck while I'm enjoying a nice evening or something. On to tonight's second encounter. I live in the United Kingdom, and I was young at the time of this event. I was about 11 years old and was taking a walk in the woods with a good friend of mine who I still know to this day. At the time, I lived in a small village in the south of England. My friend lived in the village next to mine, and I was over at her place for the day. She lived in an old-style Victorian house which was separated from the rest of the village by a woodland area about 2 miles deep. They were, and still are, quite posh and pretty well off. There was a small country road that went around the side of the woodlands and connected their house and the village, but when walking we always cut through those woods as it was so much faster. Right at the edge of the woods before the rest of the village was a livery yard where there were lots of horses we used to go and sneak apples to and pet, and that day we were on our way to do this. Once we reached around the halfway point through the woods, there was a small clearing in the trees. We stopped to use the rope swing. On the edge of the clearing, my friend was pushing me on the rope swing when we heard something in the woods howl. I remember distinctly the fact that it did not sound like a regular dog howl. I've grown up in a family with lots of large dogs, and this didn't quite sound the same. It sounds silly, but it just didn't sound right. Normally, I wouldn't really take much notice and pass it off as someone out walking their dog, but I looked at my friend and she looked nervous and frozen in place. It was that sort of moment when your instincts are trying to figure out whether it's a real threat or not. I don't know how else to describe it, it just sounded perfect, almost like it was a fake sound effect being played. We don't have wolves or anything similar in the United Kingdom, so it had to have been a pet dog, but it just howled once perfectly, and then it stopped. There was nothing, no barking, no other howls, not even the sound of any movement in the woods. It was just dead silence. After a few seconds, without talking, we sort of both silently agreed to get a move on and not delay any further. We walked onwards without talking. A while later, with about a quarter of the way left to go, my friend stops suddenly in front of me and points at the trees in the distance in front of us. I looked and I could see in the distance something that looked like a wolf, but so much larger, standing and staring right at us. It was a little ways away, so I don't exactly have any specifics, but it was at least as tall as my 11-year-old self was. Each paw planted firmly on the ground, a dark brown shaggy body positioned directly at us. Its ears standing straight up, and I remember vividly it having yellowish amber-colored eyes. I know domestic dogs can have light brown eyes that can kind of look orangey, but I've never seen one with yellow eyes, which is something that has always stuck with me. We're sort of stuck there for a while looking at it until it eventually backed off into the woods. I remember it didn't turn around and walk away. It walked slowly backwards in a sort of unnatural, uncomfortable way till it was out of view. It just struck me as odd. We obviously weren't a threat to it. It was so massive. It also had decided it didn't really want anything to do with us, as it wasn't coming after us. Normally, if a dog isn't interested in a toy, it would just turn around and walk away, but it just backed off unnaturally, like it didn't know what it should be doing. After that, we ran back in the direction we had come from, all the way back to her house. We were much closer to the village, but at that point, there was no way we were going that direction. That wolf thing disappeared too. It could have been a normal dog, but this thing was far too massive. It had bright yellow eyes and no owner in sight. Even if it was a massive stray dog, these sort of things don't really go unnoticed, as unlike places in America with lots of wide open spaces. In England, you are never more than a couple of miles away from somewhere inhabited, and people are always walking through the countryside. So surely anything living should have been caught at some point, or at least been made aware of. As well as this, things like wolves just simply don't live in the United Kingdom, so that can't be a possibility, even though it was much bigger than a normal dog. Maybe what these young ladies saw was some sort of dire wolf, or possibly a dogman, walking quadruped. I'm not really sure, but imagine being 11 years old and seeing something that massive, larger than your own self. My God, that's terrifying. On to tonight's second video. Tonight's second video is something that no urban explorer or kind of anyone that is hiking and kind of walks up on an abandoned building or home wants to see. A door wide open and something walking across the way. It's definitely a chilling footage. I don't like it. It literally gives me the chills because I love to explore rural or urban buildings that have long been abandoned. And I always, every time I do it, I get a chilling kind of feeling like something is in that building with me. And this is one of those times. It is terrifying. You guys decide. This next encounter is one that happens in my neck of the woods, upstate New York. But a lot of people, even people that live in our state, refer to Western New York as upstate. Any area away from the city is, I guess, considered upstate. But true upstaters um, are right in the heart of the Adirondacks. You know, a direct, straight shot from the city north. And I live in upstate. If it's out towards Syracuse or Rome or wherever, that's Western New York. So I really don't know if this is my neck of the woods, but they say upstate New York. I tried to figure out where this may be, and I'm not really sure because we don't have too many gated communities. We don't have any in my neck of the woods, actually. So, and that would go from, Saratoga, New York, north to Canada. So, I don't know. Probably Western New York, I'm guessing. But for the sake of the person who shares it, we'll just go with upstate. This incident occurred on Christmas of 2007 at our family's home in upstate New York. The day was pleasant and festive, opening presents early in the morning at my sister's. Hearty breakfast made by Dad, delicious smells in the kitchen as Mom and Dad prepared a feast, visits from extended family bringing pies, cakes for dessert. At around 2 p.m., we sat down to eat, then lazed out for the rest of the afternoon into the evening. At about 8 p.m., everyone had left and the food was all put away for round 2 the following day. I decided to head over and visit a friend in the next village. The drive would be 10 minutes if I took the back roads to get there, so I did. First, a little background on where my friend lived. It was a housing development surrounding a private lake. You might call it a gated community. You could still drive through it freely after hours by entering one of 4 private entry points. Since the community was built around a lake, the roads surrounding it went in a spiral sort of shape. The houses were sparsely positioned on the outermost part of the spiral road, closest to the 4 private entry points. As you drove in further, there were a lot more houses positioned closer together near the lake. My friend lived on the outer edge of this development, so once I reached the entry point, it would only take me another few minutes until I reached his house. His house, along with the others, were far enough apart that you couldn't see them from the road as you drove by. There were either woods all around with long drives or open fields with long drives. You could see porch lights on in the distance, but that's about it. As I entered into the development, the speed limit dropped from 30 to 20. There were no street lights in this development, and for some reason, I didn't put my high beams on. I couldn't go any faster than the speed limit because there were speed bumps in place every 30 feet or so. It was a mild night. I remember having my driver's side window open slightly, taking in some fresh air. I remember driving in silence, which was unusual for me as I'm normally listening to tunes while I drive. I must have been enjoying the quietness after the commotion of the day. I reached a section of the road that had barren fields on each side, and the woods were set back, houses probably nestled into the trees. As I drove, I noticed what looked like someone walking up ahead on the opposite side of the road coming towards me. Mind you, I'm still going 20 miles an hour the whole time, so it was probably less than a minute by the time the walker came into clear view. I got a quick scan of it from my windshield before my car, and it were exactly parallel. And this is what I saw. It was not a person. It stood on two long legs with long arms hanging down from its shoulders. It was strong looking, lean, muscular, but not beefy in stature. It looked thin at the same time. It stood at least 7 feet tall. It was light colored, not sure whether it was white, tan, yellow, or gray. It didn't appear to have any fur, but there was some texture to its skin, and it wasn't smooth. There appeared to be something coming down off of its back. I don't know what that was. All I can recall about its face was small features it had, but the mouth and jaw were notably large. And it had pointed things atop of its head, two things going straight upward, which with something mingled between the two things. That's when I got a quick scan in from my observation of it as it neared my car and my car neared it. As my car became parallel within a split second, I went from looking out my windshield to looking at it from the driver's side window. In that moment, its face quickly peered down at me, and all I remember was its mouth opened wide. Out came a remarkable scream that I will never forget. It gives me chills just to think about it. It consisted of a high-pitched, shrill shriek, enveloped by a deep guttural growl. Both sounds happened simultaneously in that scream. I kept driving the whole time this was all happening, so fast that I didn't even have time to have a chance to be scared or shocked or anything. I continued driving and went past my friend's house and drove home. I called and told him what had happened and that I just needed to get back. I was probably running on adrenaline to get back to my house. Later on, I was in total shock after it sank in. Had my driver's side window been opened fully, it would have touched me or worse, taken me. I am certain of it. To this day, I still haven't worked out what this thing was. And tonight's final kind of video is a creature or a crawler or whatever you want to call it, an alien gray, I'm not sure, kind of peering around a tree. It's pretty creepy. I'm not really sure about it. The eyes kind of look funny to me. But, once again, I'm not here to give you my opinion. I just want to give you the video so you guys can form your own opinion. So here it is. You guys decide. Like I said, guys, I'm not sure, but I'm really not I don't want to give you guys my opinions so that I take away or add something to your decision. That's why I'm not sharing what I think. Now, for tonight's final encounter. This happened to me last August when I was driving down from Washington to San Diego with some friends. The three of us were camping in cool spots along the way. At one point during our trip, we stopped to camp for the night near the Sierra Nevada mountains. My friend had heard that sunrise reflection over the mountains was beautiful, so we decided to wake up at around 5 in the morning the next morning to watch. That time came, and we reluctantly left our tent and walked about 10 minutes from our pretty remote campsite over a long road and stretch of desert with a great view of the mountains. We stood there for maybe 20 minutes. Then, as I was looking across the distance, something caught my eye. It seemed to be some type of animal, but a weird size and super white. At first I thought it was a rabbit, but then decided that there was no way it was far too large for a rabbit. The figure was maybe the size of a huge dog, bright white, and kind of moved in an unnatural way, jerky and fast. I remember the face being very weird, kind of indescribable. It gave me goosebumps as I stared at this thing, trying to figure out what I'm looking at. I looked over to my friends and asked them if they could see the thing as well. When I looked back, I couldn't see it anymore. Neither of my friends had seen the creature, but they shared a look, and one of them did, a motion like two fingers walking on his arm. The other nodded, and they told me they didn't know what it was, but we should just go back to our campsite. After the experience, I asked them what they weren't telling me a bunch of times. I kind of thought they were playing a joke on me, but I was still persistent with my questions. They told me to drop it until we got to San Diego, and promised they would explain when we got there. A few days later, as we drove into San Diego late at night, I brought it up again, and that's when I learned about creatures, cryptids, dogmen, Bigfoot, skinwalkers for the first time. They told me they have read stories that sound exactly like what I saw, and noted how weird it was that I described a figure like that without ever hearing anything about these things before. I was so freaked out, and I was glad they waited to tell me. They told me that they waited to share because they didn't want to risk anything by thinking or talking about these things. I'm not sure what I saw that day, but maybe my eyes were playing tricks on me, and maybe I was tired. I'm just definitely not eager to return to that area anytime soon, though. Well, there you have it, folks. I hope you all enjoyed this early morning or middle of the night bonus upload. As much as I enjoyed sharing it with you, I'd like to thank you all for supporting the channel. It is, after all, your support that helps the channel to continue to grow and go, and what gives folks like us a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free, simply treated with the respect that we all deserve. Everyone, please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and friends. These creatures are real. They are out there and dangerous. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless.